You better watch out. You better not cry. You better not pout. I'm telling you what. Moriarty's coming to town. Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Christmas episode of Dynamics of a Podcast, the only podcast dedicated to Professor James Moriarty, Napoleon of Crime, and archnemesis of Sherlock Holmes. And if it ever sounds like I am stumbling over that introduction, it is because, for some reason, even though I wrote it, my brain always wants to jumble it up as archnemesis of crime and Napoleon of Sherlock Holmes. That doesn't quite work. I'm Madeline Quiñones, and I am joined by my lovely co-host,
Dixie Parkinson.
And yes, we are well into December and the Christmas season now. And we actually kind of entirely by accident have a somewhat festive Moriarty episode for you today, because we actually after, let's see, this is our 7th episode, we finally are going to have a guest on today, which is very exciting, and hopefully nothing goes wrong, or more wrong than anything's already gone today. But before we bring her on, some quick announcements. A reminder that not only is Christmas coming, but also virtual BSI weekend is BSI weekend is coming, and the virtual stuff along with it. And if you haven't registered for pub night, especially, and you are able to make it because of your time zone, please remember to register, because that is going to be a lot of fun. It will not be recorded, which makes me sad, because then can't share that with anybody. But it's gonna be a blast, I think. And then of course we are also hosting a table discussion, and I have no idea how many people are gonna show up in the end. I might have to do some last minute hawking of the episode on pub night, trying to get people to come. And if we only have a few people, you know what? Either we'll have a shorter episode, or we'll have an extremely interesting discussion, because heaven knows that 6 Sherlockians can manage to go on at length for a long, long time. So one way or the other, we should hopefully still have an interesting group episode next time. January, middle of January will be the next time that we record. We will not be able to do this again before then. So, because of course, let's see. Yeah, Christmas and New Year's Day are on Saturdays. It both is and isn't convenient. It depends on if you need weekends to do things. So yeah, I think that's all we got for announcements. But yeah, just remember, if you want to be a part of our group episode, please RSVP with us. I'm not going to post a link just willy-nilly online, because I want us to be prepared for how many people are actually going to be there. That's a good thing to know when you're going to be hosting a group event. So yeah, without further ado, we will be pulling on our guest in just a minute here. So our very first guest ever, so exciting, finally getting guests on this show, is Claire Daines. Claire Daines is one of the authors on the MX Publishing roster. She has published 2 print books and one ebook along with them. In her day-to-day life, she is married with 4 sons and living in Canterbury, New Zealand. Sherlock Holmes has been on her radar ever since she read Silver Blaze as a 10-year-old, which that's a really good story to start with, actually. Though her first attempt at writing Holmesian fan fiction didn't start for another 20 years. She made me say Holmesian. I would rather say Sherlockian. A Study in Regret was born out of a one-shot fan fiction, which was inspired by yours truly, actually. And trust me, her story is so much better than mine was. We've had a lot of fun since then, encouraging each other shamelessly in this shared obsession. We're writing buddies, basically. So yeah, quick sidebar. Claire is also my best friend. She is also terrific for a good Moriarty conversation, which is why she's here. And the common thread among her books so far seems to be exploring alternate universes, killing off Watson at Reichenbach Falls, replacing Ebenezer Scrooge with James Moriarty, and sending the entire Holmes canon down the rabbit hole to Wonderland. And there's plenty more oddball ideas where those came from, including the long-awaited sequel to Study in Regret. And she put that in the bio. I didn't do that. So now I get to harass her about that book because I've wanted it for a long time.
Yes.
Okay, so with that, let's bring her on. Okay, so welcome, Claire, to the show. It's so exciting to have you here. I've been waiting for this. Yeah, we did the intro, and by the way, since in your bio, you yourself mentioned the sequel to Study in Regret, this means that I get to harass you now about it. So, all right, so what we have
I'm so repentant.
So, what?
I'm so repentant.
Anywho. You're our first guest, and that's very exciting. That also means that unfortunately you're a guinea pig. And the fun thing is that we get to ask you some questions that we haven't gotten to ask anybody yet because we haven't had anybody to ask. On our first episode, we had to answer 4 questions about Moriarty, and now you get to answer them. So, so Dixie, you ready to?
Okay.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. Claire, who was your first Moriarty?
First Mariachi was Paul Freeman in Without a Clue, opposite Michael Caine.
That is a good one.
I still need to see that.
Oh my gosh, you still haven't seen that?
No, I haven't seen that.
Oh, it's so good. That's the very definition of affectionate parody. It's really cute. So.
Yeah. Am I alone in thinking that Moriarty doesn't do so well as Holmes when it comes to improvisation? Spur of the moment type stuff. Great with long-term planning when he's got time to think about lots of different outcomes, but thinking on his feet, not so much. Yeah, I think that might be one of the reasons Holmes manages to defeat Moriarty and his criminal organization, because he's better at adapting and changing plans.
That's a good point.
Mm.
Good point.
Like sorry, I don't want to give you too many spoilers because you haven't seen it yet, but the finale is a perfect illustration of that.
This is true.
Because Moriarty and Holmes face to face fighting on stage, and Moriarty is just getting so frustrated. He's the one with the sword, and Holmes is the one with the prop, and he still can't land a single blow.
Oh, that sounds great. I definitely need to watch it.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Claire, who is your favorite Moriarty?
I have a couple. First one, Eric Porter.
Yay.
I know it's been said tons of times before, but Eric Porter just looks like he stepped right out of a Sidney Paget illustration.
I mean, when it's true, it's true.
Yeah.
You can't help that.
Completely looks and acts the part. He did so well. And that sinister smile of his just makes me go all shivery, and not necessarily in horror either.
Dixie gets that.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
So
second one, Daniel from the Star Trek episodes.
Yes.
yes.
I love how he aspires to become more than his holodeck program, and he actually succeeds.
Yes.
It's really interesting how in those episodes, Moriarty sees Captain Picard as his equal / respected enemy rather than Data.
Yeah.
And I think it's entirely because of Picard being the ship's captain, because when they first meet, Moriarty doesn't even know he's on a starship. I think it's more to do with the respect that Picard automatically, unthinkingly offers Moriarty as a living person in his own right, as opposed to Data or Geordi, because they have their hands deep in the ship's bowels every day, and they just can't quite get past the fact that Moriarty started out as a holographic projection, a computer program.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I think I said in episode 2, like I was listing out some Holmes and Moriarty pairs that mirror each other really well, and Holodeck Moriarty and Picard, I think, are a Holmes and Moriarty who mirror each other really well. Yeah. Yes.
They just have much more of a connection.
They do. It's like from the beginning. It's very interesting. But yes, on this podcast, we love and respect Daniel Davis. Sorry, I was
just when they first meet on the holodeck, that sent a shiver down my spine. It was magic.
Yeah, no, it's really good, for sure.
Yeah. And the fact that Picard was wearing Victorian clothing didn't hurt.
Oh, so good. It's such a good look at him.
Frock coat and top hat gets me every time.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, Claire, why do you love this character?
Can we actually ask that one a bit later?
Okay.
Sure.
All right. The next question that
answers.
Okay. Then what is one canon story outside of Valley of Fear, Final Problem, Empty House that Moriarty was definitely involved in?
The Red-Headed League. The long-term planning and execution of the gold robbery, that is absolutely Moriarty's style, and you'll never convince me otherwise.
Oh yeah, for sure. It totally makes sense. It's just funny how that idea seems to have caught on. Thanks, Granada. Right.
And I'm pretty sure Blue Carbuncle as well.
Which is about to come back up, but yeah. Well, it makes a certain amount of sense, it definitely does. And especially Blue Carbuncle, maybe more than other stories that are kind of I'm not sure what the word is that I'm looking for. Kind of low-key, I guess. A lot of low-key Sherlock Holmes stories are like family affairs. So you don't really expect Moriarty to be involved in, family drama. But the Blue Carbuncle is definitely one where it could have been him at the back of things. So I think that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, he's got to do small operations as well as large ones.
Right. Exactly. And the blue carbuncle is, supposed to be kind of like the Mona Lisa. He can't estimate its value because, well, for starters, it's not really supposed to exist. And as such, you can't actually calculate its worth either. So he can ask whatever he wants for it.
Mm-hmm.
Alrighty. So, so the reason that it works out so well having you on the show right before Christmas is that you actually wrote a Moriarty story that's also a Christmas story.
I did.
And I'm sure, knowing this fandom, it's not the first Moriarty Christmas story out there, but still, you did something pretty different with it, and you wrote A Criminal Carol, which of course is A Christmas Carol, but with Moriarty in the role of Ebenezer Scrooge, which I think is not something that that would occur to a lot of people to try to do, given the way that A Christmas Carol ends.
Yeah. Well, the first draft, as you know, was written for a Christmas challenge. If I recall correctly, the prompt was ghosts. Did I say more? The difficulty there was deciding whether to use Holmes or Moriarty in place of Scrooge. And I'd already read at least one fanfic crossover where Holmes had been used in place of Scrooge.
Right.
But I'd never seen Moriarty.
Yeah.
Sure, the ghost's emotional blackmail would have very different results than it did with Scrooge, and boy, howdy did he prove me right.
Well, yeah, because it just kind of like turns the whole story on its head, because Scrooge's problem is that he doesn't care about anybody, not even himself, because, oh my gosh, I think Bob Cratchit probably has a better quality of life than Scrooge does. And so A Christmas Carol is about Scrooge learning to care again about people. Like, that's his whole character arc. But Moriarty, in your story, actually it does care to some extent about other people. So that kind of puts him on a totally different trajectory.
Yeah, the Moriarty that lives in my head, he's no more cold and calculating than Holmes himself. And like Holmes, he's just very selective about where he directs his passion and energy. Which is why, like Holmes, he only has one best friend.
Yeah, and he's so good. Like, I'm trying to remember. I was trying to find this earlier. It was a blog post on Sherlock Peoria, which is the blog run by Brad Kefauver. And he once did a review of the Titan comics, Moriarty Returns. I don't know if you ever saw that when it came out, anything about that, but it was a while back too. But it's like, apparently, so like Moriarty it's a story in which Moriarty survives Reichenbach, which is something that also another comic book does, which is simply called Moriarty, but that's by Image Comics. But anyway, the Titan comics, which I still haven't read, apparently he's still like really evil, and Brad was saying that it made it kind of hard to enjoy the story because he's the protagonist, but he's just like so horrible, it's kind of hard to connect to him. And I think that's something that it's a tricky balance with bad guys that not everybody, I think, gets right, where you still want them to definitely be bad guys, because you don't want people to be rooting for them more than they do for the hero. But at the same time, you want them to be likable enough.
The best kind of villains are the ones you can understand.
Right.
Not necessarily agree with or like, but their actions frighten you in a really visceral way, because you realize that in the wrong circumstances, you can end up there too.
Yeah, and I think that that you do a really good job with that. So let's see. Yeah, it's like, how much can we say about this story without spoiling it? Because it's such a short story. It's unfortunately so short.
Yeah, it's so short it couldn't make it into actual, paper format.
You know what? You just need to write enough longer Christmas stories, and then you can do your own Christmas anthology.
Yeah, working on it.
Like, you've got that cute little the Watson story that just went into the Watsonian, the one with the irregular who steals the flowers. That'd be a good one.
Oh yeah, A New Leaf.
Yeah, that one's cute. All right. So what I was gonna say was one non-spoilery thing about Criminal Carol is that it also features Moran, which always makes us happy, and features them specifically being on friendly relations, and that's just really enjoyable to see. Like, they clearly get along, and that's weirdly rare in published works. I still don't know why, but it is.
I was really surprised by that poll you took a while back. How so many people didn't think that Moran gave a toss about Moriarty.
I know, because
despite a clear vendetta in the final house.
Yeah, in the empty house. Like, how does the empty house make sense then? I don't get it. But yeah, the funny thing is that I've forgotten that Moriarty and Moran get surprised by a caroler outside, and Moriarty's
like, I nicked from the original story.
And Moriarty's like, okay, here, give him some money, make him go away. So the funny thing about the moment with the caroler is that I had forgotten about it, and then like a year ago when I was doing Moriarty Christmas comics, like I did basically that exact same scene, and I'm like, I was rereading this and I was like, oh, huh, I must have like just like subliminally been influenced. Just kind of vaguely remembered that, but didn't. Yeah, that was funny. Enjoy that moment.
Well, yeah, I want to thank you for all those juicy details about Moriarty's past that you let me crib from one of your fanfics.
Well, I mean,
goes both ways.
Oh goodness. But it definitely works out to show that Moriarty is still a bad guy, because like, maybe he's nice to Moran and nice enough to his employees and does charity and gives to charities and stuff, but also like he still definitely clearly doesn't value human life enough. So yeah, I think that's really about as much as we can say about Criminal Carol without giving anything else away. So let's see. You know what? Let's move on and okay. Let's talk very briefly about this little offering. The Hunting of the Narc, Sherlock Holmes Through the Looking Glass. Because I do believe you've got a poem in here about Moriarty.
Couple, actually.
What's the other one? I can only think of the long one.
That's the Professor and the Private Eye. Yeah, the other one is the first one in the book, The Hunting of the Narc. Well, he's not actually a poem, but it's about him.
Right. It's like, I guess I don't think about that one being, about him because technically it should be. I should think of it that way, but I don't. But I still cannot believe that photoshopping made Moran's hat work because it did need fixing. But illustration for the audience by yours truly. That was a lot of fun to do. The sun is set. The Professor and the Private Eye is just such a fun poem. So which Lewis Carroll poem is that one based off of?
The Walrus and the Carpenter.
Okay. Not that I know that one offhand. You definitely know more Lewis Carroll than I do. But yeah, that one was fun. So
doesn't say in the canon whether Moriarty actually realized he was harboring a spy. But it would be just like Moriarty, though, to let Porlock remain in the firm and simply make sure he was passing Holmes information that was accurate but of little or no importance as distraction from any larger operations.
That's true. That's it. That's something that, real armies and governments do all the time in intelligence. So that totally makes sense. Well, and then your very first book only has Moriarty in a flashback, and has Moran instead as the main antagonist because it happens after Reichenbach, and you kill off Watson.
Yeah, still no idea what possessed me.
I
don't regret it though, no pun intended. I'm sure every Sherlockian that ever was has considered the consequences of Holmes losing his best friend, not just for a few years, but forever, and has felt devoutly thankful that it never actually happens in the canon. Well, in this book, you get to find out what might happen.
Yeah, for sure. It's just fun. It's funny because, of course, when you do start writing Watson in your fan fiction, he's like one of the best fan fiction Watsons I've ever read.
My blushes.
He's lovely.
Yeah, for a book in which Moriarty hardly appears in at all, his passing still manages to influence almost everything that follows.
Right.
Thanks partly to Moran and his vendetta, but also because of the profound psychological impact that Moriarty's murder, let's call it what it is, has on Holmes's psyche. I mean, the canon stories don't say whether Holmes has ever killed anyone before that, either in self-defense or otherwise. I don't really count the dog and Hound of the Baskervilles.
And Grimsby Roylott is kind of an accident. It's not like Holmes is meaning to do that. It just happens, and then he's like, well, he was a really terrible person. But
He'll sleep just fine after that one.
yeah. But yeah, I mean, I think it's, even though Doyle doesn't linger on much of anything, because he's like one of the first people to actually be writing a continuity in the first place, so the rules aren't set yet. But I think he does convey pretty well in The Empty House that Holmes has some trauma over what happened at Reichenbach. So that definitely tracks. But yeah, definitely after like reading this story, you can be really grateful that Moran never caught up with Holmes in the canon, because yikes.
Yeah, it wouldn't have gone well.
No. It's like like one time I saw somebody like kind of be turned off by the story description, but it's like, well, dude, Moran catches up with Holmes in this one. What do you think is going to happen? It's not going to be pretty.
Yeah, it's not for the faint-hearted, that one.
No, for sure not.
I would rather turn somebody off with the blur before they give themselves nausea or nightmares that they don't want.
So yeah, and then let's see. So those are the books that you've published. You don't have any other books in the pipeline right now, but you do have at least, is it just one short story upcoming, or are there more than one?
I have about a dozen different projects in various stages of
Well, no, I mean like specifically stuff that is actually going to be published. I know that you've got the H.G. Wells story.
Yeah, that's, what stage are we at with that one? I think it's about to come out.
Well, yeah, because the Kickstarter was over a while ago, so hopefully. Are there any other ones that you've submitted for anthologies or been accepted for anthologies recently?
Well, I have a sequel to The Missing Three-Quarter, which is currently in Bellinger Books' to-do list.
Okay. So,
yeah, that anthology is sequels to canon cases.
Right. So right now it's just basically the H.G. Wells story that is actually in the pipeline, which is notable for complete lack of Sherlock Holmes. Even he's kind of a ghost in the story because it takes place during the hiatus, and Watson is the hero. And poor baby, he's not that good at it, but he tries so hard. So, do you remember?
Technically speaking, it's not even science fiction, because the fantastic element is now perfectly possible these days.
Yeah, it's pretty funny.
I didn't know that at the time.
So, yeah, that one is, gosh, what's the name of it again? It's The King's Ransom.
The Adventure of the King's Ransom.
Yeah. And that is is it volume 1 or 2? Because I know there's 2 volumes.
Volume 1.
Volume 1 of Bellinger Books, H.G. Wells anthologies. So yeah, that one is so much fun because it is a Watson focused story, and it's a retelling of the Mazarin Stone. And so anybody who hates the Mazarin Stone, and I know there's a lot of people who do, should read that story and enjoy it because it's definitely a good retelling. But yeah, so the funny thing is that Moriarty doesn't, like, out of all, like, if you did like a word count of everything that you've published so far, Moriarty wouldn't feature terribly much in that word count. However, that's just what you've published. You've written Moriarty a whole lot more than that. So, yeah, not necessarily obvious in your published works, but you do tend to write stuff that happens within or close to the range of Moriarty's lifetime. So what is so compelling about this time period and this character that you keep coming back to it?
Well, while we wouldn't have Moriarty without Holmes, Holmes wouldn't be the character we love without his nemesis either. I can't remember who said it first. Villains act, heroes react. Okay, that's not always true. Sometimes the heroes make the first move and then the villain tries to mess things up. But Holmes definitely owes a lot to Moriarty in that he's forced to become a better detective to even have a chance of beating him. And a better person too. Moriarty might not have meant to act as a dark mirror to Holmes, but that's what happens. And Holmes has to make a conscious choice not to follow Moriarty down that path, to keep the best parts of himself, if only for Watson's sake. So I think Holmes is quite wrong about defeating Moriarty being the pinnacle of his career. On the contrary, his career as a better detective and a human being is only just getting started. As for the time period, well, it's partly because Holmes and Moriarty are Victorians, but I like lots of other stories from that era too, so it can't be the only reason. I guess I like the feeling of possibility from that century, because you've got all these science fiction stories, Doyle's Professor Challenger, H.G. Wells, Jules Verne, and those writers' vision of the future, they were inspired by the changes that were already going on around them, both social and technology. Yeah, and it's a shame that one of those changes was an international war, but at least Holmes does his bit there too. Yeah, it makes you wonder what Moriarty might have done during the war if Doyle had started writing a couple of decades later.
I mean, maybe Guy Ritchie and company were onto something in Game of Shadows.
Yeah, exactly. I find it amusing that H.G. Wells predicted an international conflict not too many years before one actually happened, even if it was, with Mars rather than with Germany.
Oh my goodness. Well, yeah, for sure. So you shared some of this answer with me earlier, and it had me thinking about about Holmes being a better person. And I started thinking about it, and I was like, well, he does, after he comes back, he does do some complaining here and there about not having cases, but he doesn't seem to whine about it as much as he does prior to Reichenbach. He does seem to have grown up a little, and he doesn't, he still definitely wants cases, but it almost kind of feels like he doesn't necessarily need them so much anymore. Maybe that's just me, but that was something that occurred to me.
Yeah, I think he's gained a new appreciation for the simpler things in life. Actually, I don't think before his hiatus that Holmes could have retired to Sussex.
Yeah,
I think it would have been in harness or, being killed on a case or something.
that's a good point. I never thought about that before, but I can definitely see that. Yeah. Well, I mean, he does, in the final problem, he is like weirdly, well, he feels a little bit self-destructive in the final problem, and it's
Hmm.
just, it's interesting. And of course, since we're seeing it through Watson's perspective, we can't know everything that's going on through his head, but there's clearly a lot going on in there as the final problem unfolds. Okay. So my guess is this is probably where we're gonna get to finding out why you love Moriarty. So how would you describe your Moriarty? Because you definitely you definitely write the character very consistently across universes and even in Star
To
Wars.
answer that one, sorry. Yeah, I have to come back to A Criminal Carol, but when I was writing the first draft, one of the literary characters that the Ghost of the Future shows him is Lord Vetinari from the Discworld series. Havelock Vetinari is a tyrant ruler of a city, and while he's quite a benevolent despot most of the time, he is utterly ruthless when it comes to any threat to the city and its internal workings. And I think Moriarty has much the same focus and drive as Vetinari. I mean, okay, he has an ego and his own tastes. I mean, he's got a liking for Jean-Baptiste Greuze's paintings, and I don't think it's just because of the price tag. I think a psychologist could do a very interesting study on that one. But I don't really see him as a selfish individual. Ultimately, I think he just took a good look around at what wasn't working in 19th century society, which was rather a lot, and decided that working within the current legal system to change things for the better would be a complete waste of his time and energy. And
Ironically, he might have been able to do a whole lot more if he tried. You never know.
Yeah, but to him, the means, crime, is absolutely justified by the end result.
All right. So, what do you find difficult or easy about writing Moriarty?
I don't find much difficult about writing him, but I find it very easy to write about his friendship with Moran. I mean, after all, that's what sets off events in A Study in Regret. Moran taking revenge on Holmes for the death of his best friend by retaliating in kind. I mean, I still don't completely understand yet what they see in each other, but I still very much enjoy writing them together. Yeah. And reading what the sadly few other fics about them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the Professor Moriarty kind of the D'Urbervilles by Kim Newman. I mean, it's really all parody, but I do think that that he brings up a good point with Moran early on when Moran first meets Moriarty. Like Moriarty is clearly a terrible human being, like especially in that book, but he's also like just as clearly like this absolute genius, and Moran is just like, he's awesome, I'm sticking around. And yeah, and it could be something as simple as Moriarty liked having that admiration, kind of like Holmes and Watson themselves. I mean, Watson's like, okay, you're really cool.
Genius needs appreciation.
Yeah. And Holmes is like, I'm cool. All right. So, yeah, I think that they're probably a little bit like that.
Yeah, it's a shame that Andrew Scott didn't really have a Moran of his own in the BBC series.
Yes.
He certainly does in the Fanon side of the BBC
series. Oh my goodness. Yes, he does. Oh, unbelievable how that took off. Okay. So, what or who are your influences in writing Moriarty? You know, I kind of mentioned this
Lord
world.
Veterinary is definitely,
Yeah.
and with a large dose of Eric Porter thrown in. Yeah, those are the two main ones.
Gotcha. I still have to read this world, and like I picked up the first book actually a long while back now, and I kind of got bogged down in the early part of it, and then I was told, oh, you're picking up the series at the wrong point, and it's just like, it's a 40-book series. Archival panic
pick
is
it up
a
anywhere.
thing. Yeah, well, that doesn't mean that I know where. It just, oh,
Yeah.
one of
First one
these,
I ever read, Pyramids, book 7. So
one of these days. But I also have a very large TBR pile already. Oh my goodness. And it's only getting bigger because I've got a bunch of Sherlockian friends now who also have books. So it's never ending.
Life isn't long enough for all the books I want to read.
Oh gosh.
I know, right?
Or I mean, maybe it would be if, like, you know, it didn't have to work. Like, could I
Yeah.
not work? Could I just read instead? Alrighty. Well, those are all the questions that I was able to come up with. So, Claire, is there anything that we didn't touch on that you would like to talk about from
Not off the top of my head. Dixie, have you got any questions?
No, I think that's about it.
So let's see, our next episode is going to be of course the table discussion in January, which of course, Claire, you are more than welcome to attend if you want to get up that early.
We'll see.
But after that, let's see. After that, who knows when our next episode is going to be, because I am getting a house, and even though we're doing delayed possession, it should be mine free and clear in the middle of January. And then after that, there's a bunch of things that need fixing before I feel safe about moving in. So I'm gonna be in the process of moving, like, and then getting settled, like, probably all winter long. So who knows when we're gonna be able to do another episode. Could be tricky, but after the BSI episode, the next one is probably going to be in a totally different room in a house of my own, and that will hopefully go smoothly, but who knows when. Claire, if you come back, would you like to come back in the future?
If you'd like to have me.
For sure. One thing that I would like to do is I would like to get the ball rolling on doing episodes that are just about the stories themselves. And of course, starting with A Study in Scarlet, even though it's not chronologically the first per se. I think still best to start with Scarlet. And if we can swing it, I would love for you to be a part of that one, because you've been doing all this research about the American side of the story. And I think that would be a lot of fun to have you come on and share with us some of the stuff that you've been turning up.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Okay, cool. So maybe
In lieu of actually writing the story.
I mean, writers just we just procrastinate. That's just what we do. It's like, yeah. So, all right. So we will tentatively plan on doing that at some point in the future. Hopefully in the not too distant future. Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, this was fun.
Yeah, it's really lovely to have you. So, and we definitely eagerly await that sequel to Study and Regret.
Yes. We've been waiting a long time.
Promise.
All
2
right.
words, Lee Harper.
Oh my gosh. I will fly down to New Zealand to prevent that from happening. All right. Well, yeah, thank you for coming on, and thank you everybody for watching and listening. We definitely appreciate all the support that we get from like the 5 people who are watching us. We love you guys. And of course, thank you.
And if you know anyone who likes Mariachi, tell them about the podcast.
Yeah, for sure. Like there are Moriarty fans out there. Somehow we're just not finding them. And of course, thank you. Thank you to Sonia Featherston for giving us shout outs on Twitter. We really appreciate that. Sonia's the best. So yeah, we will be back in January, and until then, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Holidays to everybody. Bye.
Bye.